Hello and welcome. This is rooflemonger, and my friends, unfortunately, the Street Fighter 6 closed beta test is now done and over with. Lots of good times were had, lots of good memories, and for the most part, near universally, just total praise for the beta and everything that's in it. Street Fighter 6 is absolutely hitting on all cylinders, and everyone is digging it. So that in mind, well, this is basically my thoughts, and I guess you could call it a review or whatever of the beta. And I'm not going to deviate too far from the mark, right? It's pretty much nonstop positivity from me. There's a couple small quibbles I have, and some of them are purely just me, and some of them I'm sure will be fixed by time, we have launch. That said, though, I'm just going to go into it here, and I'll timestamp it so you can skip around to whatever topic sounds interesting for you. First off, though, we're just going to talk general game feel. So for me, I never got to play this at a convention or whatever beforehand. This is the first time I got to play Street Fighter 6 was this closed beta test. And immediately I say it feels smooth, it feels good, it feels natural. A lot of times with a new game, it feels very alien, especially for the first time playing it. And there is that to a small degree, but I feel I've overcome that in a way I don't normally do with a new fighting game. It's just like, oh, hey, this is Street Fighter, right? And from there, it's just pretty easy to pick up and go. It just all makes sense. Now, if you've never played Street Fighter in any real way before, I guess it would be somewhat difficult. But if you've played any other Street Fighter before, Street Fighter 6 fits like a glove. It's just smooth, it works, and it makes sense fairly quick. I suppose game feel can be a hard thing to describe if you haven't played it yourself, right? But I can just say, early on, never played it before the beta, and it just felt good right out of the gate. It's definitely Street Fighter and all the things you want. Walk speeds, for the most part, seem better across the board than they were in Street Fighter 5. And buttons feel much bigger and much more fun to use than they did in Street Fighter 5. So that classic neutral / footsies experience you want out of Street Fighter is 100% here for sure. Now, obviously, the core versus gameplay is the heart of the game, but there's other features like the Battle Hub. And turns out the Battle Hub, I think, is pretty well realized for what it's trying to be. And that's just an area for you to mess around with people, be social with people, and it works. The core aspect of the Battle Hub, where it's a bunch of arcade machines laying around and you and someone else can go and play against each other, that part, well, it's been done in other games before, let's say that, right? But the whole aspect of just all your crazy creations, right now in the beta, people are kind of aiming more towards freaks, and I'm just as guilty as that as anyone else, right? Aiming towards freaks, but I'm sure once the game is actually out, we'll have a lot of awesome character creations, like just actually well done, either in tribute to other characters in other games, or just, original characters. That'll be fun to see how that all turns out. I'm a fan of the big screen that just showcases matches and players in the lobby itself, saying, who's on a win streak, that kind of stuff. It doesn't mean a lot in the end. It's just fluff, I guess you could say, but it's good fluff. It's fluff I like. And the classic arcade games being playable as well. That's really cool. We have the classic Final Fight, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo is playable. I tried out a little bit of Magic Sword as well, as that's one of the games. And hopefully at launch, there's even more classic Capcom games to play. The only thing, and it's not that big of a deal, I guess, but the one thing I do gotta knock this is you can't pick and choose which game you want. At least in the course of the beta, this could be different at launch. But in the course of the beta, the games were time gated. Like at this time, Street Fighter 2 is available. At this time, Final Fight is available. At this time, Magic Sword is available, right? So if you just want to plop down and sit and play, you could not do it. You had to play only the game that was available for the time. Now, granted, if you're buying Street Fighter 6, I know this isn't exactly the main event for you, right? But still, if you're going to give me a bunch of retro games to play, I like to play the one I want to play at the time I would like to play it. It's a small gripe, I guess, but it's definitely noticeable to me, because when I plopped down, I didn't want to play Magic Sword, I wanted to play Final Fight, and I couldn't. So maybe this is something that can change further down the road. That said, however, I'm still very happy the retro games are in, because that's a step above and beyond compared to most other fighting games for sure. Now, to speak on what is perhaps the single most core gameplay mechanic in Street Fighter 6, the drive system. So this is definitely very different than anything Street Fighter's ever done in the past. And, an all-new mechanic that's so important to the game flow, the first time around, it's kind of easy to screw something like that up, right? And in my opinion, I think for the most part, they completely nailed it. It solves some core problems, especially that were present in Street Fighter V, right? Every round, your drive bar, regardless of what it was the previous round, is start off at max, right? So that means EX moves, drive impacts, or drive rushes, whatever you want to do, all the cool stuff, you can do all of the cool stuff right away out of the gate. And your big super meter gauge being separate from the drive rush gauge means you still get to do cool supers at the end. Unlike, say, other Street Fighters or even just other fighting games in general, if you burn your meter on your cool EX moves, then you never get to see the supers. So I think separating the two out is actually a fairly smart idea. So with the exception of super moves, you have every tool available to your character out of the gate all the time at the start of a round, right? So then we come to the fabled burnout mechanic. And for a lot of the scenarios, if you get burned out, it's mostly on you because you made poor decisions earlier on in the round. Like myself playing Chun-Li, right? I get a little too crazy on tossing EX fireballs. I normally don't play characters with fireballs, so it's a very powerful feeling, right? And then I toss 2 out in a row and I'm like, oh, wait a second, I'm almost in burnout. I didn't pay attention, right? Because I immediately lost 4 of my meters, and that's sort of a big deal. Because while we've covered it in some other videos on the channel, if you don't know how burnout works, while it's not a guaranteed loss by any stretch, you are definitely on the way to losing the round if you're on burnout. You have lost all your ability to defend yourself for the most part. No drive meter means no EX moves, which means no invincible reversals, means no parries, means no drive impact to counter their drive impact. It just basically means you have to block. And blocking is way worse because every single move you block is an additional +4 frames of advantage when you're in burnout. So once again, playing Chun-Li, right? If I do heavy lightning legs, it's negative on block. But if you're in burnout, it's now plus on block. So on top of you taking chip damage in burnout, I can now do things that are normally I lose my turn, but now it's still my turn. I can keep going and going and going and going. So you're stuck in forever block stun until you screw up or you manage to wait out the clock. And perhaps in time that will be the play, right? When you're in burnout, just play lane, wait out the clock, because you don't really want to risk anything. So that all said, parries obviously return as well. We did an in-depth video on parries on the channel, and I think it's strong. It's not free. If you get the lesser non-perfect parry, it's basically just the same if you block the move, although you give up a little bit less ground, and you also gain a little meter for your drive gauge because you successfully parried. And if you do get a perfect parry, then hey, you get a full combo. Maybe one that's a little scaled, but still, free damage is free damage. So for the big masterful counterplays and just, navigating neutral in and of itself, it's good, I think. It's going to be a welcome addition to the game. Especially because unlike Street Fighter 3, there is counterplay. If you just go for parry, you can get thrown, and throw damage off a parry actually has a 70% boost. Like a throw will do like a solid 20-ish% of your life if you get thrown while you're trying to parry. So parry has solid counterplay. Drive Rush seems very strong. Now, admittedly for me, I didn't get too much out of Drive Rush in the beta because it's kind of a mechanic I'm not used to using. Normally I play like slow defensive characters or, like grapplers, that kind of stuff. And just rushing forward isn't something that occurs to me. So I didn't get to use it that much, but I do like it on paper. It costs you a meter, right? So it ain't free. And if you botch it, and then you're just out your meter. And it makes all moves advantage on block for the most part. On hit or on block, it just gives any move 4 additional frames of advantage. So that means for a lot of characters' overheads, that makes their overheads comboable on hit. And I've definitely been hit by it feels like thousands of Drive Rush overheads and then I get comboed out on, right? So it's definitely going to be a favorite of aggressive players for sure. That, and it can allow for some pretty wild combos. Let me give you an example here. This one here is from Lord Javits, and yes, even boring old Ryu can get some fancy stuff going here. Let's say just a little bit more elaborate than the usual crouch medium kick into fireball Ryu is known for, right? And ending with a big fancy level 3 super at that. If we slow it down just a little bit here, you can see, okay, we have a jump in, stand heavy punch into the Hashogeki, his new move, which launches, and then Ryu drive rushes out of a parry, which costs 1 bar, and then he drive rushes the hit, which is 3 bars, and then parries, drive rushes again, which is 1 bar, hits, drive rushes again, which is 3 bars, empties out, and then combos out. So you can get a lot of drive rushes in one combo. It seems like, at least for drive rush combos specifically, the only thing that's really going to hold you back is your inventiveness, because it would seem that a lot is certainly possible. So parry, good. Drive rush, good. Now what about the evil drive impact? If there's anything at all I've heard negative about Street Fighter 6 during the course of this beta, drive impact is absolutely it. Because, well, it's a kind of wild mechanic for sure. Even myself, I've gotten a little salty about it before I fully understood all the rules, and now that I do fully understand all the rules, I still think it's kind of wild. In a lot of ways, it's the Street Fighter 4 focus attack kind of better, though. You have 2 hits of armor. If you manage to hit as a counter hit, you get the full wild combo of your dreams. You can do anything you want to the enemy. If they block, it is 100% safe on block. Even if they parry it, regular parry, and they're point blank, it's only -3, which is punishable by nothing in the game by any character that's currently in the beta. The only way to punish it is by perfect parrying it or by doing a drive impact back against it, which is doable because it is what we call reactable. It's slow enough to be reacted to, but only if you're really looking for it. If you're not, you're gonna get blown up. And the added bonus, of course, is if you're anywhere near a wall and if you block it, you might as well have just got hit, honestly, because you're going to get hit, thanks to the wall bounce property. And you don't have to be cornered to be wall bounced. You can just be sort of a position resembling the corner, near the corner, right? And that actually is mildly frustrating. Street Fighter, over all the years of Street Fighter, it's always told us, when the big scary thing comes, at the bare minimum, block. But it forces a reaction out of you basically every time you see it, which is fine, but I feel like it dominates the conversation a lot of the time. While you're playing the game, to the point where I compare it and look at other moves. The EX moves, the overdrive moves, if you will, they all cost 2 bars. And yet, honestly, I can't think of a single EX move in the beta that's as good as drive impact, and drive impact costs half as much. So as for the merits of if anything should be tweaked, I'll leave that to you guys. But at bare minimum, just for the value it offers, because it offers so much across the board, I think it would be better served as a 2-bar move instead of a 1-bar move, because it's just as good or better than a lot of the 2-bar moves you have available to you. And if it were to remain a 1-bar move, I feel at some point something's got to give there. But that's my opinion on it, so feel free to agree or disagree with that. But overall, the drive system as a whole, I like it. And in a way, too, considering the burnout status, it's almost like a second health bar, because you do have to baby it when it starts getting low, right? And meter management is one of the funner aspects of fighting games, for sure, right? So another meter, one that definitely dictates how your game is going to go, I think is fine, and overall a strong addition to the game. Now, another thing, and I guess this is going to be a kind of small section because I only really got one thing to say about it, is netcode. And the netcode is A++, top shelf quality, fantastic. That's all there is to say. I don't know how many games I played in total in the beta, but I can literally say I had exactly 1 bad match in the entirety of the beta because the dude was definitely on like some kind of unstable Wi-Fi and the game was stuttering, right? That said, this is the rule for all games, but no matter how good the netcode is, the connection is only as good of the worst of the 2 connections, right? So make sure to wire up, get a stable connection, please. But otherwise, the netcode is truly and honestly fantastic. I even played a few games against Lord Arya, who runs That Blasted Salami YouTube channel. It's a good fighting game channel. Check it out. And he is in Japan, and I am in the middle of nowhere, Ontario, Canada, right? So it's literally about the exact halfway point across the world. And from middle of nowhere, Ontario, Canada to Japan, I can tell you it was basically flawless. It legitimately just played great and good, and it was a solid all-around experience. So if that distance is good, basically every distance is good. If for whatever reason netcode was one of the things holding you back, all I can say is don't worry. It is perhaps the single strongest aspect of the game, a game full of very strong aspects. Another small thing, and this is obviously if there is to be an open beta, it'll be changed up, but the roster for the beta. The one thing I didn't like, and don't get me wrong, I'm glad to play the beta, right? I don't mind Chun-Li at all, but she would have never been my first pick, let's put it that way. She was just the pick of the options I had available. There's a very certain play style, a very popular play style that's represented in a lot of fighting games that just simply isn't in Street Fighter 6 beta, and that is that of the grappler or the big body. You got your Shotos, you got your zoners represented here, rush down, mix-ups, all that kind of stuff, but well, no big characters. No command grabs. The roster as we know it isn't even necessarily hurting for these kind of characters. It's just there's no example of any kind of character like this, either just plain old big body like a brawler archetype or just full-on grappler, playable at all in the beta. And that's just a shame to me. It is my preferred playstyle in fighting games, and I had no character to represent my preferred playstyle in the beta. Hopefully, once again, if there is an open beta in the future, there's at least one example, like at least put Zangief in there or something. But I can't say I wasn't disappointed. I know that's not the game's fault necessarily, it's purely a me thing, but you know, it's nice to have the way you like to play represented. So, small quibble, absolutely, but still quibble nevertheless. Now going from one quibble to another, so I played the entirety of the beta on the PlayStation 5, and one thing I found mildly disappointing is I don't think it was running anywhere near native 4K. Not to say the graphics were bad or anything, because absolutely and certainly not, right? But I could tell just by looking at it, because I play on very large 4K monitors at home here, like, okay, this isn't necessarily as crisp as it could be. As you can see here, this is the menu for the PlayStation 5 version, and they have action mode, which has performance and resolution qualities, although it's stuck on performance mode here on the beta. They don't tell you what they do, unfortunately, right? You're left to guess. But I would have hoped at the very least you could get like a scaled 4K or some kind of 4K experience at 60 FPS on the PS5 version of the game. And when we're looking at the in-game menu here, like the characters, when you see them in the character select screen here, they look not good. They look like 480p quality or something. Very blurry, very fuzzy. And I don't know if it's just for the beta and something they can fix later down the line. But it's a level of visual fidelity I was kind of shocked it wasn't represented here. It's not a deal breaker by any stretch, but it certainly is something I hope is fixed along the way, or at the very least, we're given a level of clarity what like the different graphic modes mean. So another quibble, just once again, you know, it's PS5, it's the modern gen. I'm really sick of seeing, you know, resolution versus performance mode toggles. This stuff should be figured out by now. It's a pretty powerful system, right? But wait and see on that. Anyways, besides that, though, I do have to say, overall, Street Fighter 6, I was expecting to like it, and you know what? I do like it. I think it's a great game. The worst things I could say are basically minor quibbles in the end, small tweaks one way or the other, right? There's nothing I have an actual major problem with other than the full game isn't out right now. The beta weekend was a wonderful experience all in all, and I was already excited for the game to be sure, right? But I am even more so excited now. It basically dominates my thoughts most of the day. Like, I'm just thinking about Street Fighter 6 most of the day, every day, and maybe that's unhealthy, I suppose. But for the Capcom marketing team, that's definitely a big win for them. The one thing I sincerely hope is that there is an open beta, because the closed beta test was like closed with a capital C. Not many people got into this test, which is unfortunate. It is a very quality product, and I want as many people as possible to see it for themselves. Watching YouTube videos is great, and like and subscribe, by the way. But once you get your hands on it, it's truly a wonderful feeling. So please, Capcom, open beta somewhere along the line before release so everyone can see what Street Fighter 6 is all about. So, in the end, basically nothing but bubbly and happy feelings. Street Fighter 6 is gonna be something special. Like something we haven't seen in a long time, and I think it's gonna unite the majority of the FGC behind it. So, good times absolutely are ahead. And that said, my friends, well, we're at the end of the video. So thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well, and go out and play some Street Fighter.